presidential candidate of All Progressives Congress, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, at the grand finale of his presidential campaign in Lagos, assured that he will work hard for Nigeria, just as President Muhammadu Buhari and others at the event promised to vigorously pursue the renewed Hope Manifesto for the good of all Nigerians. They stated this in Lagos, where thousands of people participated in the event. And in other news, the campaign train of Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi was in Anambra, his state of origin, to canvass the support of the electorate ahead of the presidential election on Saturday. But barely 4 days to the elections, critical questions bordering on the preparedness of INEC, security agencies, among other agencies and stakeholders to conduct a free, fair, and credible election remain on the front burner. For instance, it was just this evening that news broke of cash disbursement to INEC by the Central Bank of Nigeria for logistics purposes. Today's program, however, will focus on security and whether Nigeria is ready for the election amidst the challenges which have persisted across the 6 geopolitical zones. And joining us to discuss this and much more, we have General Sani Usman Kukasheka, retired. He is a former spokesman of the Nigerian Army. We are also joined by Dr. Kabiru Adamu. He is a security and intelligence expert. He is also the chief executive of Beacon Consulting. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
General, we're happy to have you.
Indeed, I'm also glad to be
Yes, Doctor, I know you have a lot to tell us.
Well, it depends. If it's politics, I would stay back. If it's security, then I will talk.
You shouldn't be afraid.
You are welcome to the program, and as always, I'm your host, Hamza Idris. But gentlemen, before we commence, let's have a look at this report from Northwest.
Residents say they will not want to be disenfranchised, but their coming out to vote depends largely on the security provided in order not to endanger their lives. They are afraid that attacks on their communities may not abate as elections draw closer, thereby making it difficult to be certain about coming out to vote. Elections? Are you referring to the election we have been hearing about in the media? I don't know anything about that. We are being governed by terrorists. Did you see any government presence here? Anyway, we have had a polling unit here, but can they come on election days? Only time can tell.
Dabbobi ba mu san adadin abin da aka dauka ba nan. Dai ba a san ayi zaben to ana iya kin zuwa. In ko aka sa tawakkali kamar yadda muka sa to la hello za iya zuwa ayi.
Elections in this village depends on the security provided before, during and after the elections. But for now, I cannot tell. If anybody vows to conduct election here, let him dare it. As we speak, terrorists can appear here any moment. God forbid.
Kusan wata sa'a kullun sukan zo bakin garin nan har ma daidai nan inda muke din nan.
According to these residents, 2 out of 3 of people in these communities have fled to safer places and have never seen any politician coming around to campaign.
Ban sani ba ko za a kawo ayi zaben nan ba za a kawo ba shine bayan da tunda ba a sanar da mu ba.
We are all ready to vote on election days, but let me tell you, the safety of all stakeholders must be the watchword, because no one can guarantee that except God.
Ina ga zaton irin wannan yanayin shi hana hawo wai ayi campaign.
Just 10 minutes after leaving Sawayawa and Kadage villages in Kurifi local government area, 30 bandits armed with AK-47 rifles riding on motorcycles reportedly attacked the community. However, despite these security concerns, the electoral umpire is optimistic that elections will be held.
I would like to confirm and to reassure the public that elections will hold in all local government areas, in all registration areas and polling units in Katsina State, regardless of security challenges that we are having in some places. So the public should be confident in themselves and in the commission that election will hold. Nothing is stopping us from conducting election in all areas.
Though eligible voters in the insecurity-prone communities of Katsina State are hopeful that elections are held peacefully, the state of uncertainty remains. Abdullahi Ismayamadi, Trust Television News, Katsina.
Well, that report was from Katsina last week. Shortly after the report, the locals expressed optimism, but less than 3 hours, more than 30 bandits stormed neighboring communities and killed people. General, I'm starting with you. Are we going to have election in this atmosphere, in places like this?
There is no doubt about the fact that election will hold come Saturday, 25th February 2023 in this country, except for those polling units outlined by INEC.
Yeah. The 240
exactly.
States,
the assurances from INEC and the security agencies and other leaders to point to the fact that there will be election, and we're optimistic and we hope and pray that it is going to be devoid of any untoward incidents. It is going to be peaceful, credible and fair too.
Okay, peaceful, credible and all-encompassing. Doctor, I want to have your take. What happened last month, January, in terms of the statistics? Sadly, the figures, what was the outcome last January? Because we will address these issues zone by zone, so that, because we don't have any other time to do this, but now, just 4 days to the election.
Yeah, what we saw from the data that we collected in January was sadly a continuation of the fatality figures that we have seen in Nigeria over quite a long period. Almost about 700 persons were killed
in January.
In January,
across the 6 zones.
Across the 6 geopolitical zones. It's a reduction from the highest we saw in 2022 was 1,400.
Okay, 2021.
In 2022.
Okay.
And I think that was in the month of either March or April that we saw that figure.
Okay.
But since then, it's been reducing. Now, I would usually want to be, when I say reducing, related to something. Having 700 persons killed in a month, it's worrisome. To the effect that these are people's parents, these are brothers, sisters, children. Even if it's 10 persons, it's still worrisome. But if you relate it to that 1,400 that happened around March, April, then there is a reduction. If you also relate it to the figure that we saw in the month of December, there is a reduction. But it's still worrisome, definitely.
Then what is your take? Let's start with the Northwest, which we had the report here. There are many flashpoints also, as indicated by INEC, in the 240 units that will not have election. But from the time they compiled that, we have newer flashpoints which they didn't capture. Will this discourage people, or you think people will really come out to vote?
Voter turnout is a function of several things. Yes, it's not just, as an example, security or INEC's decision to identify a polling unit or even move a polling unit from a location to another location. So as an example, one of the, I would say, gray areas that has emerged in the 2023 elections is the role of political parties in advocacy and sensitization of the voters. We haven't seen enough of that. That role has been left more or less to INEC. And because it is a process that involves different stakeholders, we would have thought the political parties, who frankly are the chief benefactors of the process would have done more in terms of advocacy and campaign. It is only in this last lap that we have seen an increase in campaigns, and a lot of those campaigns are actually targeted at individuals. So their flag bearers, as an example, will be the one. Even the governors, we're hoping that maybe perhaps after the February 25th election, we'll start seeing a semblance of that.
Okay, maybe by then they have delivered the president.
The president, and they will do that. But because it's a process, the entire gamut of the electoral process is meant to be in that space. Civil society organizations are frankly doing better than the political parties. If you most of the campaigns that you would see raising voter awareness is actually by civil society organizations. I am yet to, and correct me if I'm wrong, see any campaign, public campaign geared towards voter turnout or even managing expectation, which by the way is one of the risks associated with the 2023 elections. In other words, how does somebody emerge victorious? This the 25% in 2/3 of the state. It's only a civil society organization that is two actually that are spending money and doing that type of campaign. Enlightenment. I haven't seen any political party concentrate on that. So to that extent, voter turnout is going to be determined by several factors. The insecurity is one of them. This idea of the creation of polling units that unfortunately has now become slightly politicized. We talked about the 240 polling units that INEC has identified as places where there won't be vote. The statement given by Professor Mahmood is not necessarily about security, even though security may be a reason why those 240 polling units were identified, but he gave other reasons. So point is, voter turnout would be a little bit difficult to determine on the basis of this factor. What we know is that in the 2019 elections, there was a 34% voter turnout, and everybody was of the opinion that 34% is below the average. We're optimistic that with the renewed optimism, especially after the passing of the Electoral Act 2022 and the introduction of technology by INEC, that we would see people have more confidence now in the process, and so they may come out. However, if you speak to people in places like Katsina, Zamfara, Sokoto, Kaduna, to an extent Niger, who have been victims of insecurity, and who will tell you, after you've left me at the mercy of bandits, now you want to come and ask me to participate in an electoral process?
And that is the question I wanted to ask General, even though you are not a politician, but as an expert. Don't you think it will affect the apathy? Or let me put it another way, the test or the urge of the electorate to come out. Just last week we had a report that these Birni Nyawuri girls, that including a general, are now contributing money to rescue them. Now, if you go to that community and tell them to go out en masse and vote, do you think they will do that? Because it's like they are disillusioned, they feel abandoned by the system.
Well, I think to answer your question, it may interest you to know some of the political parties who went to Birni Nyawuri and campaigned.
They were not stoned.
They campaigned. So, to a large extent, that will answer your question. But just like Dr. Adamu has just said, it's a permutation or a combination of so many factors. And we are going in for the presidential elections and members of the National Assembly on the 25th. And we have 18 political parties buying. And so automatically people have choices. And from what I monitored so far, there was this optimism on the part of the electorate, especially on the parts from those areas. Yes, they are so concerned about security, they are so concerned about welfare and general well-being of the people. And they look at this as a golden opportunity to better their lot. So basically, we shouldn't be so pessimistic about that issue. Possibly there will be even larger turnout. And just like he made mention, there is so much expectation and enthusiasm on the part, especially on the part of the youth. We have never had an election that generated so much, concern or so much interest on the part of the youth. And you remember, I think the youth constitute between 65 to 72% of the total population of this country. So they have a say. And they know.
Will they have their way?
Exactly. If this election,
you know, in democracy, you will have your say.
Exactly.
But
Quite
you having your way
unfortunately,
is actually,
you know, that is even the irony of it, in the sense that they said the minority have their say, the majority always have their way, right?
Yeah.
But in Nigerian context, it's always the reverse case, because the youth are the largest population of the total population. I mean, you know, constitute the highest percentage, and yet in most instances they don't have their say. Yeah. So, electing, especially of this nature, present an opportunity for them. So
for them to
exactly. So there is so much expectation, so much optimism, and beyond that, again, there was this sensitization. I know the NGOs have been doing marvelous job, and other components of the Nigerian society, including the political parties, actually. You marvel at the level of awareness on the part of the people, irrespective of the electoral process and all the rest of the thing. People have volunteered to do so many things.
Okay.
So I think there will be.
Okay, Doctor, I want you to make sense of the map we will have on the screen, because it is from your consultancy firm. Yes. It's the Nigeria Security Events map, right?
Yes.
So what about it?
It's a depiction of what happened in the month of January 2023, the month before the month that we will have the elections. And I mean, the thing I would like to mention is just look at the two dots there, the red dot and the blue dot. The red dot represents armed attack. So anytime a weapon is used to perpetrate an attack, it's depicted in that. And the blue dot depicts political violence. Now, sometimes it's really difficult to differentiate between the two. When, for instance, when a non-state armed actor carries out an attack, is it doing it for political objective, or is it doing it for other reasons?
So only one state is immune there.
Yes, only one state actually.
And is that Jigawa?
Is interested. Actually, Yobe.
Okay, Yobe.
Yes.
Of all the states?
Of all the states, surprisingly.
Which was one of the front lines.
Exactly. But these things vary, as you know. Sometimes even states where that have been pretty quiet, incidents occur and then they are recorded. The spread of the events, I think, is what is important. As you can see, they are spread across all the 6 geopolitical zones with a concentration in the southeast for obvious reasons. The separatist group, Indigenous People of Biafra, has been quite active, and you can see the dots there in the southeast of the country.
That's armed attack?
Armed attack, exactly.
And this fatality is a combination of maybe security agencies picking up?
We record deaths by security agencies.
Okay.
And deaths, so both government security forces and the non-state armed actors. Any fatalities is recorded there. What would be interesting actually is to sometimes do a comparison between these deaths by government security agencies and the ones by non-state armed actors. But in the southeast, the important thing to note is the concentration of the activities of this separatist group, Indigenous People of Biafra.
And today, sadly, they killed a woman in Amagu Yoruba community in Okwege local government of the state. They burned the country homes of the Imo State Commissioner for Youth and Sports, Emeka Okoronko. They also burned the home of a former Dean of Law and former Commissioner of Information in the state, among many others. General, what do they want? Because we are shifting from northwest to southeast now. Yes, and we are going to have map in the course of the discussion. I mean, graph to show us attacks on.
I am not a member of those IPOP group or a non.
But a general is always a general, and that is why we always bring when we want to discuss complicated matters like this.
I always also ask myself that question because it beats imagination, because these are a group of people. When you talk about the southeast, They are the most industrial kind of people, very, very enterprising and entrepreneurial skill. They are even at the verge of, attaining political leadership of this country. Now, out of nowhere, you have a group of individuals that decide to commit atrocities beyond human imagination. Now, look at the loss of lives and properties, and bulk of the victims of these heinous crimes are also members of the indigenous communities. Yes, agreed, there are residents in those areas. So you begin to ask yourself, why? Of course, there are so many, including the conspiracy theory that people do not want the Southeast to progress, hence they sponsor this. But if you look at it, the combination or the makeup of the people perpetrating this act, they came from that same community. And that is why when you even reduce it, to not only coming from a particular state, they come from a particular local government, a particular community, people know them. But why is it that everybody is quiet about these issues and knowing fully well that it will consume them? Now, how will you, reconcile the beheading of a local government chairman?
Yes.
What offense has he committed? And now everywhere in the world, democracy is the, acknowledged form of government. For the past 22 years or more, Nigeria has been practicing it. And now you have a group of people that even were threatening people to come, that they should not come out on election day. You have had instances of video clips, people were going to campaign and they were, destroying their own. So you begin to ask yourself, why? And who is behind this?
And why I'm asking this, because I want you to actually establish a nexus, because you were at the theater of war in the Northeast.
Issue number one, and I'm heading towards that, if you allow me.
Okay.
There were allegations that the political class themselves are involved. Because I just cannot imagine somebody from outside will come and tell you to sit at home and you sit down at home. So there must be a kind of connection. And that is why I said the solution to that problem, I think, is constructive engagement of the component that make up the total society in the in the Southeast. To what extent have you seen the traditional rulers, leaders, or the religious leaders, or the political class coming together, calling the bluff of these people? Yes, there was a semblance of that defiance when we had the Anambra State governorship election. They said people should not come out, and they came out, and of course they were able to choose the person that will, steer the affairs of the state. And now we have this federal election. Whether you like it or not, there is no better way of getting your demands or cries heard than, a conventionally acknowledged way of doing things. At the end of the day, violence will not solve the problem. Therefore, you need to talk. And the earlier it is done, the better. And whom do you talk to? Sadly enough, people are just hinging on the release of Nnamdi Kanu, but forgetting the fact that he has threatened, almost all the components of the Nigerian society. Violence was carried out, and of course there is legal process. Why don't we take the legal process? Now, why don't we talk to the majority of the other people to see whether we can have a solution to this problem? But of course the political class are equally guilty
of this.
Yes.
Okay.
So basically, that is one of the reasons. And secondly, I think there is this issue of abandonment of that very important segment of the society. Like I said, they are very enterprising and they have a teeming population of youth. To what extent has the government engaged the youth constructively, giving them options that they can use? So invariably, when you look at it, take or leave it, it borders on the issue of governance, either good or bad of it.
Yeah, if you have bad governance, bad product. Yeah, Doctor, the editorial of Daily Trust today was on, in court. IPOP killings can no longer be ignored. And the first sentence in that editorial was a reminder of the gruesome killing of a customary judge, still in Imo State. He was in the hallowed chambers. The terrorists went there, drag him, kill him, and kill other people. Now, are we going to have election? Because I asked the other one, I asked General. Now, with these needless killings, what are the chances of holding election in the Southeast? And what are the implications on the overall outcome of the election? Because candidates require to be present across board for them to be legitimately declared as winner, right?
Valid concern. One of the things that we've identified as a threat to the 2023 elections is this brazen confidence with which non-state armed groups, such as the indigenous people of Biafra, are confronting our security forces. As we're having this conversation in December, they abducted a serving military officer and did a video of her and showed it to the world. Till date, and correct me if I'm wrong, she has not been rescued. She's still in their hands, in a sovereign country. So I emphasize the word capability. They have shown their capability to confront our security forces in a manner that, as a strategist, worries me. We have to dent their ego. We have to show them that there are consequences. Now, I know there are operations ongoing, and we must commend the military and the other security forces actually for some of those operations. But what we have not done is to limit their ability to operate. So when Simon Ekpa, I think, in all the way Finland, comes out to issue a sit-at-home order, and he's able to implement it, it sends the wrong signal, in terms of capability. Now, he has ordered another sit-at-home from 23rd to, I think, 28th.
Meaning he don't want people to go. So we will go on break. When we come, I will allow you to shed more light on that. Viewers, please don't go away. We will be back shortly.
Fellow Nigerians, God has once again brought us to another season of general elections across the country. I am therefore calling on all of you to exercise your franchise in a peaceful atmosphere. I am calling on specifically our traditional rulers, religious leaders, and parents to warn their followers and wards alike to not allow themselves to be used by a few to foment trouble. I want to assure you that the government has taken adequate security measures to allow everyone to come out and cast their votes. I am therefore appealing to everyone to give them the necessary support. Fellow Nigerians, I want to use this opportunity to once again thank you for electing me to be your president on 2 occasions. I am not a contestant in this election, but my party, the All Progressive Congress, has a candidate in the person of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. As I mentioned before, Tinubu is a true believer in Nigeria, who loves the people and the development of our country. I am calling on all of you to vote Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He is reliable, and I trust he will build on our achievements. Finally, I want to once again assure you that I am fully aware of the current hardship you are facing as a result of some policies of the government which are meant to bring overall improvement to the country. I'm appealing to you to exercise further patience as we take appropriate measures to ease these hardships. God willing, there will be light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
It done they come. Population and housing census. It done they come. Oh yeah, everybody get ready, well.
On the 29th of March to the 2nd of April 2023,
the National Population Commission will be conducting a comprehensive population and housing census to generate reliable, sustainable and up-to-date data needed for policy formulation, security, national planning and development.
Population and housing census, it go make life better, because na him our government go dey use.
National Population and Housing Census 2023. It's your civic responsibility. Please support it. The 2023 Population and Housing Census is being conducted by the National Population Commission, NPC. Personal data assistants, PDAs, will be deployed countrywide for the census exercise. Everything will be done digitally.
Census on the come for April 2023.
Nigeria's 2023 Population and Housing Census.
On the 29th of March to the 2nd of April 2023.
You count. Be
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daily Politics on Trust TV. Do well to follow the conversation across our social platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and watch us live on YouTube. We still have Dr. Kabiru Adamu and Brigadier General Kukasheka in the studio. I'm coming to you, General. Many attacks on INEC facilities, especially in the southeast, before we move northwards. What is the implication of this? INEC keeps saying that, yeah, they are okay, they will be fine. And we have a map there of Nigeria showing attacks on INEC offices. Is there any state that is immune from 2019 to this moment?
Well, if it is attack on INEC facilities, if you look at it, some of the states, such incidences did not occur. I think where we have most of the incidences, I think mostly is in the southeastern part of the country. Yeah. Agreed. There are noted political violence here and there, you know, especially with Beacon Consult report that I've seen. But by and large, looking at the consultative aspect of it, you know, on the part of INEC and the security, you know, architecture as a whole, talking about the police, and the paramilitary and the military, I think we have to give them the benefit of doubt on those assurances to ensure that the election holds in a peaceful atmosphere. And some of these attacks actually, they happened in most instances taking advantage of the vulnerabilities of, you know, the security situation in particular communities. And in most instances, these guys, the numbers is insignificant. And beyond, you know, engaging the security agencies, I think the issue of engaging, you know, the host communities of these facilities is equally very important. Okay. Because most instances, you see the facilities being used are locally made. And is it the vehicle? Is it the IED material? So people are quite aware of those people. But what is stopping them, you know, from, you know, exposing, you know, them before they even carry out their nefarious activities? That is really the mind-boggling. And unless we divorce politics from security issues, because in most instances what is happening, there is clamor or kind of
agitation of sorts?
No, not even agitation, kind of clamor for supremacy in terms of political clouds among the political class. Hence, these people taking undue advantage of what is happening and, perpetrating, their nefarious act. Beyond that, if we can engage the people themselves too, I believe it will make a world of a difference, because there is limit to which the security forces
exactly they need support.
Timely and accurate information, and in most instances the information is not there till when the act has been carried out. But you see, you know them because in fact in any given community, beyond the fact that now we are far more sophisticated, unlike the olden days, but I can tell you every community, they know the criminal among them.
Yeah, meaning if there is actually readiness, we will solve all the problems at once. Doctor, I want you to make maybe comparison, December and January, vis-a-vis, we are moving to the northeast now. Yeah, after making the comparison, December 2022 and January 2023, and this is the month of election. Yeah. What are the implications?
So if you see the events, which we call incidents, in December, we recorded 327. However, in January, there was an increase to 375. So a 15% increase. But incidentally, there was a decrease. Despite this increase, there was a decrease in both abductions and fatalities. In the case of abduction, we saw a 70% decrease. Quite good. Now, this is what data does to you. If I was, advising the CDS or the National Security Advisor, what I would do is what led to this decrease? What were the measures that we introduced that we didn't have in December that we now had in January that led to this decrease of 70%? I mean, 70% anyway is an A. Yeah. And in the case of the fatalities, we saw a 21% decrease. Yeah. So what led to that decrease? What we saw is an increase.
That is the big question, yeah.
What we saw is an increase in security force operations. So almost all the agencies went out and increased the level of security operations that were ongoing, preparatory to the elections.
So maybe if not for election, they wouldn't have stepped up?
They've been up. Remember, after the Kuje incident, there was a presidential directive. Okay. And since then, we've seen an increase in security operations. Okay. But in December into January, we saw another boost to that operation. And there could be a couple of reasons. One of them could be availability of funds. The other one is the platforms that have been acquired across almost all the new platforms, all the security agencies. The other one again is the political will. An election was around the corner. There was several meetings, directives.
So this will have positive impact on the
It depends.
Okay.
It depends. One of the things that I think we need to highlight in our conversation, which General has mentioned, is intelligence. The enemy is not sleeping. The enemy is the same way we're having this conversation, which is in a public space. The enemy is listening.
Yeah, and they are preparing also.
And they are preparing. So intelligence is the key to solving this problem. And not just intelligence, the ability to use that intelligence, because it's one of the challenges in Nigeria. Intelligence is gathered, but unfortunately it's not used. So in this regard, just like General mentioned, the architecture for gathering intelligence, security to an extent is local. We can sit here in Abuja and discuss about security from now until kingdom come. If we don't take that discussion down to the grassroots and implement what we have agreed, then it would sadly the issue would remain tabletop.
All right.
So as an example, there is the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security. In doing my analysis for 2019 elections and 2015 elections, it's very clear that that platform assisted significantly in managing some of the security challenges that could have affected those elections. In 2023, for some reasons, that platform is not as active. It is activated, but it's not as active as it was in 2019 and 2015. Part of the reason may be this. In previous elections, there was this argument between the Inspector General of Police and the National Security Advisor on who was going to chair that committee.
Okay.
I remember very well, there was a public spat in front of the then president. I think he was under Goodluck Jonathan, if I remember, between the then Inspector General of Police and the then National Security Advisor over the chairmanship of that committee. Now it has been decided that it is the National Security Advisor and the chairman of INEC that are the co-chairs
of that
committee. So it appears that because these two organizations don't have the platform, as it were, at the state and local government level to bring together the stakeholders, security stakeholders now, in the manner that would allow what we saw in 2015 and 2019. Now, let me qualify this. In the last 2 weeks, we have seen that committee activated at the state level in Bauchi, in Gombe, in Kano, Sokoto, and FCT Abuja. I have seen that committee sitting.
Well, we heard that the IG is actually reluctant till date. Today there was a meeting. He keeps sending representatives, and we did an exclusive story on Sunday, Daily Trust, where after actually assigning DIGs, AIGs, commissioners of police to where they will monitor election, they now issued another signal that they should not go anywhere.
I think those are two different issues. And to be very fair to the IG, he has done quite well in preparing the police for the elections. I can tell you as far back as I think mid-2022, when he convened what he called regional seminars, and he brought in all the leadership, senior ranking police officers.
But I can see General nodding his head. But I will add it with a question. Maybe you have something to say on this interagency rivalry?
No, I have nothing to say. The truth is that actually, unlike 2019,
yes,
the consultative committee on the general election, I think, is still on.
Okay.
As of yesterday, they met, and of course.
What was the IG there?
I wouldn't know, but the IG was equally there. In fact, he addressed. But most importantly, of course, are the service chiefs also. The bottom line is that, just like the president said, it is the responsibility or primary duty of the police to secure the electoral process. It's internal security. Therefore, all other security agencies are there to support them. And I know they are doing the best they could. If you look at, the composition of the consultation yesterday at the International Conference Center, it was all encompassing. I am sure even your medium was represented.
Of course.
So you see, it is there. And I think it's just simply because the election has not come yet to see to what extent
is the collaboration.
The collaboration, the test of it, has not come. We are still preparing for the election. But I think a lot has been done to ensure the security and safety of the electoral process on the part of the security agencies. And on the part of the electoral umpire itself and other component of the society, because I've seen the civil society organization. In fact, even some of the, foreign partners, countries and observers and so on, and so many things. So I think we should not
politicize it.
Exactly. Well, it's politics, so you cannot avoid it.
And even though I don't want to speak for anyone, I have this feeling, because we had discussions with quite a number of our colleagues and all that we are actually in a different time. It's not a normal election because of the...
There is no doubt about the fact that
so when you have like NSA, if you have NSA will be able to talk to almost every other person.
Even the 1999 general election has not generated, or 2015 has not generated so much interest and concern as 2023 general election for obvious reasons, the security challenges and so many other things. Therefore, every right-thinking person is concerned about it, and that is why you have even adversary notes by some of these Western powers and what have you.
But are they adding any value, the Western powers?
It's interesting.
Coming to supervise the election, so they didn't say anything at the height of our crisis and all that. What are they going to tell us?
So INEC held a meeting today with them, and I was very happy with the narrative, the messaging in that meeting. Clearly, you are here to observe, don't get involved.
Exactly.
There are international standards.
But will they abide by that? One of our senior editors he shared something. We're supposed to run it in the paper, like a classified document that was released. How in 2015 efforts were made by some of these observers to actually undermine the election to pave way.
And that is why it is very important.
Yes.
That is why it is very important for every Nigerian to understand the importance of this election, especially to the sustenance of democratic governance or process in Nigeria. Now, it is not everybody that likes Nigeria to be,
prosperous,
peaceful, and developing nation. As a matter of fact, interestingly, I had an interesting conversation with someone. If you know a journalist, in one of the West African countries, and we are talking about politics in Nigeria and all the rest. And I asked him whether it is the same in his country. He said, "Look, we are taking dressing from you." For those of you that are not familiar with the word dressing in military parlance,
yes,
actually it's more or less like whatever the person in front of you does, you copy from it. So they are copying from Nigeria. So automatically it is kind of a clarion call that we should always try to make sure that we get our act right. And there is nobody that can, run your affairs other than yourself. Therefore, we should understand these people, they will only add value simply because they have over time established reputation and credibility. By the time they said your election is free and fair, automatically you need third-party testimony. Beyond that value, I don't see anything. And I know in Nigeria, we are capable of conducting, we even conducted election in other countries.
Exactly, and we got it for them.
Nigeria is the beacon of hope among not just West African states, but even on the African continent when it comes to democratic process.
All right, so we are running
it's a collective thing.
You're okay, thank you. I have this question for the two of you. I'm tempted to refer back to the fatalities, that graph. Abductions have gone down, right?
70%.
70%. Is there a nexus between the going down of the abduction of this policy of President Muhammadu Buhari? Because it's like the money is not there to give ransom. I don't know, because we've been looking at the negative side of the cash policy and all that. You, based on your findings, because you always try to find variables that necessitated or give room to certain occurrences.
So the policy was introduced on January 31st, if I remember well, and the figures we provided was for December 1st to December 31st, and then January 1st to January 31st. So what we're seeing has nothing to do with the monetary policy. However, when we release our February reports, and inshallah, we're going to compare what we saw in February with what we saw in January, and then we'll be able to reach a conclusion. But I can tell you from where we stand as at today, there is a reduction in abduction. Now, whether it is a function of the monetary policy or it's a function of the increased security forces operation,
or the combination of two,
or even more beyond all of that, unfortunately, only time will tell.
And maybe your results for February. Finally, General, will money play some role, or with this policy, everybody has been actually held neck deep in 30 seconds? Yes.
In which way the role?
Maybe will money play a role in influencing voter participation and all that?
Money has always been playing significant role.
But this policy of President Buhari will.
But I think to a large extent it will mitigate the importance of money in terms of the electoral process. I think so.
Okay. What about voter turnout? Finally, from you.
On money, I have a contrary view. Because money can mean different things. People see money as cash. Money can be if I buy a voucher and give you the voucher and say go to
Well, I'm talking about instances where people will come and say, okay, but for XYZ, I'm going to give you 1,000 or 5,000 cash.
So then I think let's be specific about cash. Yes, the tendency for cash to be used has been reduced.
Exactly.
Because sadly, cash is not just Naira. Cash can be dollar too. And we've not touched that.
All right.
Sadly.
Now, it's like we're opening another chapter of discussion, but time not on our side. I hope we get opportunity to do that, maybe post election. Yes. Dr. Kabiru Adamu, we thank you from Beacon Council for coming to the program and your informed perspective.
Thank you for having me.
Brigadier General Hukasheka, Thank you for
so much for having me on
asking
your
good questions, especially in the Southeast. They need to do something ahead of the election.
Yeah,
it's not yet late. Thank you.
We just pray for a peaceful and credible election.
Amen. And that's a wrap on today's program. Viewers, do well to collect your permanent voters' cards and make a commitment to vote in the forthcoming election to guarantee quality leaders for all of us. Thank you very much for joining us. I am Hamza Idris, and bye-bye for now.